Sarah Langley was a beloved schoolteacher, and Victor Crane was the quiet librarian everyone trusted, until one day their lives collided in a way no one could have imagined. A disappearance, a hidden room, and secrets that would shock an entire town set the stage for one of the most twisted trials in modern history. It started as an ordinary Monday in the small town of Oakridge, a quiet place where everyone knew each other and life moved at a slow, predictable pace. The streets were lined with maple trees, and the faint smell of coffee from local cafes mixed with the crisp morning air. Children walked to school, neighbors exchanged greetings, and the town felt safe, almost too safe for what was about to unfold. Sarah Langley, a beloved local school teacher, woke that morning like any other. She kissed her cat goodbye, packed her bag for the day, and stepped out into the sunlit streets, never knowing that this would be the last time she would be seen by her family. Hours later, when Sarah didn't show up at school, colleagues initially assumed she was late. By mid-morning, concern began to grow. Parents who arrived to pick up their children noticed that her car remained parked in the driveway, a quiet red sedan gleaming under the morning sun. Friends and neighbors attempted to call her, but the phone went unanswered. At first, it seemed like a minor disappearance. Maybe she had an unexpected errand or had gone to visit a relative. But soon, unease began to spread. When her sister arrived at Sarah's home and found the front door locked from the inside, panic set in. The house was perfectly in order, dishes in the sink, books on the shelves, and her coat neatly hanging in the closet. There were no signs of struggle, no broken windows, nothing that indicated someone had forced their way in. The local police were called, and a team arrived to investigate. Officers scoured the house, opening closets, checking under beds, and examining every corner, but found nothing. The scene offered no clues except a faint scent of perfume lingering in the hallway and a diary on the kitchen counter with its pages scattered as if someone had rifled through it. The diary itself became the first piece of evidence, a small window into Sarah's private world. Inside, there were the usual musings about her life and work, but also strange entries that hinted at unease. She wrote about feeling watched and about a figure she sometimes glimpsed near the edge of the woods behind her house. At first, investigators dismissed these entries as the imagination of a worried mind, but as the days went on, the words began to take on a more sinister meaning. Outside, the townspeople grew restless. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed they saw a black van parked near the woods late at night. Others insisted they had glimpsed a shadowy figure near Sarah's house on multiple occasions. People began locking their doors, double-checking windows, and avoiding the streets at night. Every small noise in Oakridge seemed amplified. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of a door became a potential sign of danger. The local media descended on the town, broadcasting updates on Sarah's disappearance and interviewing neighbors who offered conflicting accounts. Each new story added to the sense of dread and uncertainty. Weeks passed with no trace of Sarah. The police dug deeper, searching nearby forests, abandoned cabins, and even underground tunnels rumored to exist beneath the town. Finally, in a drawer in Sarah's bedroom, they discovered a hidden note tucked inside the pages of her diary. The note was cryptic, written in a hurried hand and warned of someone in Oakridge who was watching too closely. The message was vague, but chilling. It confirmed what the town had begun to suspect. Sarah's disappearance was not random. Someone had been targeting her, observing her every move, and planning something far more sinister than anyone could imagine. The peaceful facade of Oakridge had been shattered, leaving a town gripped by fear and a mystery that would haunt them for months to come. Months passed in Oakridge with the mystery of Sarah Langley's disappearance hanging over the town like a dark cloud. Life moved on outwardly, but the sense of unease never left. The police continued their investigation, following every lead, no matter how small or seemingly irrelevant. Each tip was investigated, each rumor chased, yet nothing led to a clear breakthrough. Then, one late evening, An unexpected discovery would shock the town and turn the case upside down. Surveillance footage from a convenience store on the edge of town captured something unusual. A man acting strangely, lingering near the entrance and appearing to watch the cameras. At first, the footage seemed unremarkable, a minor curiosity in a routine investigation. But detectives noticed details that didn't fit. The man's calm demeanor, his careful observation of the surroundings, and the small notebook he carried, which he appeared to consult frequently. The man's identity was revealed as Victor Crane, a 42-year-old librarian known for his quiet nature and meticulous habits. On the surface, he seemed harmless, polite, reserved, and deeply engrossed in books and puzzles. He had lived in Oakridge for over a decade, and few residents knew much about him beyond his position at the library. His arrest stunned the community. How could someone so ordinary, so seemingly unremarkable, be connected to something as horrifying as Sarah's disappearance? During the search of Victor's home, authorities uncovered a hidden room in his basement. The discovery was horrifying. Inside were dozens of photographs of Sarah and other missing individuals, meticulously organized and labeled. Maps were pinned to the walls, with routes and locations marked in red ink. There were journals filled with notes, diagrams, and timelines detailing observations of his victims' routines. It became clear that Victor had been planning his actions for years, tracking multiple people and carefully studying their movements. Every detail was recorded with precision, revealing a disturbing obsession that sent chills through the investigators. The most shocking piece of evidence was Victor's diary. Unlike the notes and maps, this diary contained more than just observations. It revealed his inner thoughts and intentions. There were descriptions of his excitement when planning abductions, his delight in imagining the fear of his victims, and unsettling accounts of how he managed to evade suspicion. For law enforcement officials, hardened by years of dealing with violent criminals, the level of calculated cruelty was almost unimaginable. It painted a portrait of a man who had led a double life, a seemingly ordinary librarian by day, a meticulous predator in secret. As Victor was brought into custody, the town struggled to comprehend the revelation. Questions swirled in everyone's minds. How had he avoided detection for so long? Could anyone else in Oakridge have been aware of his activities? For the first time, the peaceful streets of the town felt threatening. People began locking their doors and questioning even the most mundane interactions with neighbors. Meanwhile, the police continued digging into Victor's past, discovering small inconsistencies in his work history, unexplained absences, and minor offenses that, in hindsight, hinted at something darker. The courtroom was soon filled with anticipation as the case prepared to move forward. Evidence from Victor's home promised to make the trial a gripping spectacle. The hidden room, the photographs, the maps, and the diaries would all become central pieces of the prosecution's case. Oakridge braced itself for a trial that would expose secrets no one had imagined, forcing the town to confront a reality that no one wanted to believe. Victor Crane, the quiet librarian, was no longer just a neighbor. He was the face of a horrifying mystery finally brought into the light. The trial of Victor Crane began with a tension that gripped Oakridge like a vice. From the moment the courtroom doors opened, it was clear that this case would dominate headlines and capture the nation's attention. Every seat in the courtroom was filled, and a palpable sense of anticipation hung in the air. The prosecution wasted no time laying out the horrific details they had uncovered, and the evidence was overwhelming. Maps with marked locations, photographs of victims, and journals filled with Victor's meticulous observations painted a chilling portrait of premeditation and obsession. The town's peaceful veneer had been ripped away, replaced by a sense of fear and disbelief. People struggled to reconcile the quiet, polite librarian they had known with the calculating predator presented in court. As the trial progressed, the prosecution revealed the depth of Victor's planning. He had studied the routines of his victims with painstaking care, noting every small detail, from their favorite coffee shops to the times they left their homes. Investigators explained how he had avoided detection for years, changing his appearance slightly, using different vehicles, and carefully removing any trace of his presence. Every photograph, every note, every map was evidence of a mind that thrived on control and secrecy. For the jurors, it became impossible to ignore the cold logic that guided Victor's actions, and the courtroom murmured with shock as each new detail came to light. The defense attempted to counter the prosecution by arguing that Victor was insane, that his obsession with tracking and cataloging his victims was a product of a mind disconnected from reality. They claimed he had no real intent to harm anyone, and that the evidence reflected imagination rather than action. But the prosecution dismantled this argument piece by piece. Witnesses testified about strange encounters, sightings near forests and empty fields, and other behaviors that could not be explained away. Forensic experts detailed fingerprints, fibers, and hidden surveillance footage, all linking Victor to the locations and times associated with the disappearances. The defense's claims of fantasy versus reality began to crumble under the weight of undeniable facts. The most shocking moment came when the prosecution presented a recording found on Victor's encrypted phone. It contained Sarah Langley's voice, terrified, pleading for help. The courtroom gasped in unison. Investigators explained that she had been held alive in a hidden underground chamber for months, an unimaginable revelation that added a new layer of horror to the case. The jurors were stunned, and even the seasoned court officers seemed shaken. It was one thing to hear about photographs and maps, but hearing the voice of a victim confirmed the terrifying reality of Victor's actions. Every day of the trial brought new revelations, each more disturbing than the last. Evidence that had been meticulously cataloged by Victor was displayed, showing a level of detail that was almost obsessive. Each exhibit, each testimony, seemed to pull the courtroom deeper into the dark mind of a man who had led a double life. The residents of Oakridge, watching through media coverage, were horrified and fascinated in equal measure. What had begun as a missing person case had transformed into a chilling exploration of human obsession, deceit, and evil hiding behind ordinary appearances. By the end of the chapter of testimony, it was clear that the trial of Victor Crane was not just about justice for Sarah Langley. It was a lesson in how darkness can lurk behind familiar faces, and how truth, no matter how shocking, has a way of emerging when persistence and evidence collide. The courtroom had become a theater of horror, suspense, and revelation, and no one would leave unchanged. Just when the courtroom seemed to be settling into a rhythm of horror and disbelief, an unexpected twist turned the trial of Victor Crane into something entirely new. The prosecution had painted a clear picture: a solitary predator who meticulously planned his crimes and evaded detection for years. Everyone assumed the story had reached its peak, that the worst was already known. But a sudden revelation would send shockwaves through the courtroom and the entire town of Oakridge. It began with a hesitant testimony from a local teenager named Ethan Harper, who had been reluctant to come forward. His parents had warned him to stay out of the media frenzy, but guilt and fear had kept him silent until now. Ethan claimed he had witnessed Victor meeting someone on multiple occasions, someone who was clearly aiding him. The details were sparse, but enough to spark immediate intrigue and alarm. Detectives quickly revisited evidence they had previously analyzed, searching for any indication that Victor had not acted alone. Their review uncovered overlooked communications, encrypted messages, coded notes, and subtle references in Victor's diaries that hinted at collaboration. The idea that Victor might have an accomplice stunned everyone. If true, it meant that someone else in Oakridge, someone ordinary and seemingly trustworthy, had been complicit in his crimes. The prosecution adjusted their strategy, and the courtroom buzzed with speculation. Who could have been involved? How deep did this web of deceit go? Even the most seasoned attorneys were unprepared for the revelation that the predator they were prosecuting might not have been working alone. As investigators dug deeper, the truth began to emerge. They uncovered a network of accomplices who had helped Victor in small but critical ways, hiding evidence, monitoring potential witnesses, and occasionally facilitating the movement of victims. Shockingly, some of these individuals were longtime residents of Oakridge, people who had appeared in the community for years without raising suspicion. Friends, neighbors, and even co-workers were implicated. The courtroom gasped as names were read aloud, each one a reminder that evil could hide behind familiar faces. For the townspeople, it was a betrayal of trust on a scale they had never imagined. The revelation of Victor's network transformed the trial. No longer was it just the story of a single criminal. It became a story of deception, manipulation, and complicity. The jury was forced to consider the possibility that the crimes had been a coordinated effort, meticulously planned and executed with the help of people who had blended seamlessly into the community. Every testimony, every piece of evidence, now had the potential to uncover another layer of this intricate scheme. The suspense in the courtroom was almost unbearable as spectators realized that the extent of the conspiracy was still unknown. For Oakridge, the aftermath was devastating. Families questioned their neighbors, and even the most mundane interactions were scrutinized. The trial revealed that darkness could hide in plain sight in the very people you trust most. Yet despite the fear and disbelief, there was a strange relief in knowing that the truth was emerging. The town had been confronted with a reality far more sinister than anyone imagined, and while the full extent of Victor Crane's network was still being uncovered, the shocking twist in the trial ensured that the case would be remembered as one of the most disturbing and suspenseful in modern legal history. The trial of Victor Crane finally reached its conclusion after months of harrowing testimony, evidence, and revelations that had left the courtroom and the town of Oakridge in a state of shock. The jury had listened to hours of chilling accounts, examined photographs, diaries, maps, and recordings, and considered the testimony of witnesses who revealed the depth of Victor's depravity. For many, the end of the trial could not come soon enough, yet no one could shake the sense that the story would leave a lasting scar on the town. When the jury returned to deliver its verdict, the courtroom was silent except for the faint shuffle of papers and the creaking of chairs. Victor Crane sat motionless, his face a mask of calm that belied the storm of emotions swirling around him. One by one, the jurors spoke their decision, and it became clear that the evidence had been too strong, too undeniable to allow for any other outcome. Victor was found guilty on all counts, including kidnapping, premeditated abduction, and conspiracy to commit multiple crimes. The sentence was life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Even the judge, accustomed to high-profile cases, seemed struck by the severity and complexity of the crimes as he delivered the ruling. But the verdict did not mark the end of the story. The investigation into Victor's network of accomplices continued, uncovering more individuals who had facilitated or concealed his crimes. Some were sentenced to decades in prison, while others received lighter sentences for their cooperation in revealing the full extent of the operation. The courtroom had been transformed from a venue of accusation and defense into a theater of revelation, where each new piece of evidence added layers to a story that no one had imagined at the start. Oakridge had been forever changed. The trial exposed the dark undercurrents hiding beneath the town's quiet streets. Families struggled to process the aftermath. Residents who had once taken comfort in the predictability of their neighbors now examined everyday interactions with suspicion. The town's sense of safety was shattered, replaced by a lingering unease. Public spaces felt different. Streets that had once seemed familiar now carried an undercurrent of tension. Even long after the trial concluded, the story of Victor Crane was discussed in whispered conversations, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving and evil could hide in the most ordinary places. Yet, amidst the fear and devastation, there was a measure of closure. Sarah Langley's family could finally begin to grieve, knowing that justice had been served. The discovery of her hidden location and the rescue of other potential victims allowed authorities to provide answers that had been long sought. For the investigators, the trial was both a victory and a haunting lesson about the persistence required to uncover truth in the face of careful deception. Victor Crane's trial became more than just a story of crime. It was a study of obsession, manipulation, and the lengths to which someone could go to hide behind a mask of normalcy. The courtroom moments, the shocking discoveries, the unexpected twists, and the revelation of a secret network ensured that the story would be remembered as one of the most extraordinary and disturbing trials in recent history. Oakridge would never forget the shadow that had fallen over it, nor the chilling reminder that evil sometimes wears the face of someone ordinary, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself.